You want to do some democracy now?
I do.
Okay, democracy now.
I have a certain amount of respect for Amy Goodman.
Yeah.
I
Fair.
think
Yeah.
you kind of have to, especially if you are, like me and you're 32 and you remember when like leftist media, like we think of it now, just simply didn't exist.
Nothing. Right? No one's talking
Really?
about this shit, right?
Yeah.
And it's just like on every other Twitch stream. Well, not every other, but like tons of like Twitch streams and podcasts. Like people are actually doing the dialectic,
So I think you have to give some credit
Yeah.
to democracy now. It's amazing that Amy Goodman has not retired or died,
Okay.
or just been driven out of media.
Yeah.
All things considered, like I know that there's plenty of boundaries that she's not necessarily willing to push, but also there have been plenty of people that have pushed less and been completely kicked out of anything resembling mainstream media. She has somehow managed to hang in there in spite of some controversies that could have cost her career.
She's got a lot of great coverage to be admired. I'm thinking specifically of maybe Cuba or Palestine. And I do like to be fair in that one of the things that I generally criticize Democracy Now! For is what do I want to say? When they do the headlines, often they're not doing any opinion, and of course that's when they pull in guests, and oftentimes their guests are the best part of the show. But I do think possibly I think they are doing their audience a disservice by when doing the headlines, they often let State Department people from any or just like anywhere, pretty much they just like uncritically let them say what they want to say, and it oftentimes is like I think imperial propaganda. Okay, so with that said, her like domestic stuff's great. Internationally, it gets a little gray. Oops.
I can definitely agree with that.
Okay.
And yeah, I think one of Democracy Now's main faults is that they really don't push back. They have that kind of older school attitude of like everybody gets to say their side, and it's like actually maybe you should tell some people to shut the fuck up.
Or if you're gonna have people who should shut the fuck up, and if you're gonna report on them, like balance it out immediately with some criticism somehow. Okay. But again, usually the best part of the show is when they have a guest on, and I think maybe the best part of the show is when Amy's not talking. Okay, here we go.
In Ukraine, air raid sirens sounded overnight in every region of the country as Russia's military launched attacks that the Pentagon said were aimed at critical infrastructure. Russian bombs and shells.
Every region of the country? Were they bombing every region of the country?
I don't know. It's hard to say.
Yeah. It's just like, it's weird, right?
Shells fell on power plants, fuel and ammunition depots, railway stations, even an amusement park in Kharkiv, where one woman was injured by shrapnel. This comes as the Associated Press reports Russia's bombing of a crowded theater in Mariupol on March 16th likely killed about 600 civilians who were sheltering inside, far more deaths than previously reported.
We did a piece on this. It was Telus who are saying that as the Ukrainian Azovs were running away from this place, and they probably ran to the steel plant, they said they torched the place. Now, we don't know, but Amy Goodman never talks about that side. Who did she say said that?
On March 16th, reports Russia's bombing of a shrapnel. This comes as the Associated Press.
The AP.
AP, okay.
All right. There you go. There's your grain of salt right there. Yep.
Side, far more deaths than previously reported.
Wow.
Ukrainian president.
Oh my God, dude. She's doing the manufacturing consent right there. How does she? She's got to know it too. That one's actually a pretty egregious example because we just don't know. Fog of war, dude. And she's just going to go with AP? Fuck this shit. That's blatant, dude. That is blatant imperial propaganda.
Yeah, I saw this quote that I think is really relevant that was everyone's anti-war until the war starts. Like, it's really easy to say, oh yeah, I'm anti-war when there's no war going on. But then when the propaganda hits, can you actually keep that stance? Can you hold strong to that belief? Or are you going to get swept up in propaganda? Because I know a lot of folks that say that they're, anti-war, but are 100% swept up in propaganda right now. And, you know, I feel like I have to say this all the time, anytime I talk about this. None of this is justifying Russia's position.
Right. Exactly.
Like, that's the thing that's like, this has become like a team sport to a lot of people. This is not a team sport. The fact that a lot of people are viewing it that way is so offensive, because like, if you're just like, oh, you're either with Ukraine or you're with Russia, it's like, I don't want people to fucking die. That's what I want. That's the side that I'm on. It might seem, you might think, okay, well, Kennedy, you're saying you don't want people to die. Amy Goodman's trying to report on people dying. Isn't that what you want? Not exactly, because again, this is how you manufacture consent for the $33 billion package that they're trying to push through, $20 billion of which is for arms.
I didn't know that.
Less than half is for humanitarian. And that's just the current version. That's not the version that Joe Manchin is going to sign off on, which will probably be like $7 billion is for humanitarian aid. And, you know, the rest is for arms. $20 billion for arms for Ukraine. That's more than their entire military budget for the year. Yeah. And we don't know where that stuff's going to go. We don't know where it ends up. Several reports, and this is in the mainstream news even, several reports came out in the last few weeks that we don't know where our military aid is going in Ukraine. We don't know where it ends up. We don't know whose hands it is in at the end of the day. So $20 billion in arms just going into mystery hands. What would y'all say if I said, I'm going to send everybody who follows me on Twitter a gun, no questions asked? Would you think that was irresponsible, maybe?
Well, I mean, everyone who follows you, that's pretty cool, though, right?
I mean, I have hate followers.
Okay.
Conservatives that follow me.
I see now.
You know, you got to think about, like, that's the thing. Exactly. See, first you're like, oh, well, maybe that's okay. But then you start to think, wait, where are all those guns going to end up? That's what we need to be thinking about with Ukraine. If even 10% of $20 billion worth of arms just, like, goes to insane right nationalists, whew,
that's a lot.
Wow. That's a lot. Yeah. They blew up a whole warehouse full of arms and armaments that we just sent to Ukraine. Yeah, that we had just sent. And they found it. And rather than even claim it, they were just, as a flex, they were like, hey, we're going to blow this up and film it.
Wow. I had someone in a YouTube comment. They're like, Azov's only 1.7%. And I'm like, or Nazis are only 1.7% of the Ukrainian militia. And I'm like, how do you get this stat? Are people going around asking who's a Nazi, and you're just going to trust the answers? And then second of all, if you actually do the math, that's thousands of people, dude. It's like very scary shit.
Also, that's 1.7. You have to remember, Nazis don't admit that they're Nazis unless they feel really fucking bold. Okay, This is a fundamental part of the fascist playbook. You do not call yourself a fascist. You do not admit that you're a fascist. You do not do this stuff until you're at the point where you feel like you're already basically winning and going to take power. So that 1.7% are the 1.7% brave enough to admit their true politics out loud in front of anyone. That's terrifying. We don't even have that in our military. Because a lot of people will point to that number and say, well, we probably have more than 1.7% Nazis in our... I agree with you. But we don't have 1.7% of our military willing to call themselves Nazis in front of a journalist.
Right? They're willing to throw patches on. Hey, look at this Nazi symbol. It's Nazi symbols all the way down.